Listen, I'm concerned about Herschel Walker. I don't like talking about Herschel Walker. I've tried to avoid it as much as I can because I think a lot of times when we talk about Mr. Walker, it's easy to slip into he said the who the ha what now, and we could stay there, right? And we could totally stay there. And I mean, people do it, and it's fine, and people like to key about it. But I actually see Herschel Walker as someone who's very, very dangerous and who represents and who is backed by people who represent some of the most some of the most significant threats to our election integrity that we've seen in a very long time. When you think about not just Herschel Walker and the easy to make fun of aspects, but when you think about the fact that Herschel Walker is being backed by Republicans who are pouring billions of dollars into these races with a real effort towards intentionally placing him there while they are also manipulating the rules of how elections are administered to make it easier to check or to challenge voters as they are trying to make their way to the polls. Am I making too big a deal about the concerns I have about Herschel Walker, or perhaps, or should we be tuned into something slightly differently when it comes to our analysis of him?
No, I mean, look, Herschel Walker is a threat to Black people in Georgia and around the country. And particularly, he's a threat to what Atlanta has become for Black
Mm.
people. And we have to put this in a particular context. But first, look, I just have to say this and get this out, to get this part out the way. We know that Herschel Walker was an amazing running back for the University of Georgia, had a really good pro career. At the same time, though, simply because someone is good at one thing does not mean they're good at something else. And
Yeah.
for example, if people like my writing, if people like my research, that's great. Why are you going to get in a plane when I'm flying it? I don't know how to fly a plane. We're going down. I'm not going to be like that brother who was playing a video game and landed the plane talking about he was the captain. Like, I'm not going to be able to pull that off. And unfortunately, Herschel Walker, as much as I think that pro athletes don't get enough credit for all the things they learn, all the things that they know, how smart you actually have to be able to use your
Right.
mind quickly and then use your physical bodies. He is the epitome of shut up and dribble or shut up and run.
Mm.
And
Mm.
accordingly, he is the anti-smart, anti-educated, anti-empowered Black men, anti-Raphael Warnock. Raphael
Mm.
Warnock is the epitome of these things. He is the legacy of MLK in a whole bunch of ways. Herschel Walker is the anti of that. See, there's always been an anti-Black person, oftentimes an anti-Black man, to challenge the empowered Black person and the empowered Black man to represent
Mm.
what white people actually want Black people to be, which is submissive
Ooh.
or less intelligent or less knowledgeable about subjects. And again, this extends even to, say, a Dr. Ben Carson, who, amazing neurosurgeon, he separated conjoined twins. That man
Right.
is legacy in every way. That does not mean that he should have been a politician. So
Mm.
we have to put these things in a particular context. I think the other thing about this is that um, when you think about Herschel Walker and you think about the statements he's making and the Republican machine that's backing him, we have to realize why that's happening. Republicans realize that if they can maintain Florida and Texas and they can get back Georgia and potentially one other
Right.
state, they win. But as you noted, make no mistake, Herschel Walker is also a cover for the voter suppression tactics that are happening in the state of
Mm.
Georgia. And we simply have to
Right.
look to the governor's race as well to pay attention to that, where we have seen responses about the way that the current Governor Kemp is trying to frame what's happening with voting as some sort of way that people are doing things undercover. No, people are actually getting the equitable way to vote. And we have to realize what Herschel Walker means in this equation.
Mm. One of the things that really concerns me about Herschel Walker and about really this entire effort that the Republican Party is engaged in right now, I have some family members who, and some friends I had a chance to interact with recently, and not necessarily the most politically astute. Not necessarily keyed into, they're not political junkies like I am, brilliant people in their own right, but not necessarily, watching the horse races and not necessarily in that space. They were, and these are Black men, attracted to the swagger, I mean, let's just be of not just a Herschel Walker type character, even of a Donald Trump type character. And I'm like, these are people that I call family. And so I was, after I got done clutching my progressive black pearls, I realized that, okay, no, we're all susceptible to misinformation. We're all susceptible to being swayed by our innate base level attractions. And one of the things that these particular family members are attracted to is the swagger of a black man or somebody who is as irreverent as they identify powerful black men being. Again, not the most politically astute, but really typical, or in, you know, sort of they easily exemplify black people that we know all over the country, not just black men, but black people that we know all over the country. And I am concerned that when it comes to people who are not paying attention, when it comes to people who are not necessarily keyed into the horse races, when it comes to people who are not thinking about the policy, but who are just going off of base level, oh, I like that. Right? It's almost like a gutter, almost like a visceral, oh, no, that's cool. That feels good to me. I'm concerned about the appeal that someone like a Herschel Walker, who, again, I think today he and Raphael Warnock are still neck and neck. I would say that that's amazing to me, but after having this conversation with some family and friends, I'm like, no, it makes sense. I am concerned about that segment of our population. What should those of us who are paying attention to these horse races, who are thinking about the policy and the long-term policy implications, how should we be approaching conversations with folks who are just simply, quite frankly, attracted to the fact that the man played ball and he was good at it and he's big and bold and he bad?
Yeah, well, look, we have to start with that. We have to say, don't simply vote for Herschel Walker because he can run the ball well. Again, this gets back to voting for people because they're good at, or supporting people even because they're good at in one space. That doesn't mean they're good in the other space. So we have to start there. Acknowledge where these people are coming from. The second thing, though, is then we also tell them, look, Republicans and right-wing extremists, these right-wing conservatives, are banking on you only thinking about him running the ball. They are hoping that you actually don't pay attention to what he says. Because not only, I mean, is it just difficult to watch him speak? Like, just being frank, it's difficult to watch him speak. He also is not knowledgeable about topics, whether that be climate change, the economy. He also does not represent the other aspects of Black families that we want. I mean, of course, we know that things have come out about children that he has not taken care of. That's not the kind of representation that we want in Washington, in Georgia, or anywhere. And then the final thing is realize that he is a Black Manchurian candidate. He is put there as someone. So a Black Manchurian Candidate, if anybody's seen the movie Manchurian Candidate, I love movies, one of my favorite movies, about a pawn that was selected to move up the hierarchy and be controlled by special interest. That is Herschel Walker right now. Again, he is the antithesis to what we actually want Black people to be. And they hope that because he ran the ball, that is all we will pay attention to. So we have to educate ourselves. He is a pawn in this game. And really, no, I'm actually not even giving him enough credit. He's not just a pawn. He's more like a rook or a bishop on the chessboard, right? Like, we can't just say he's a pawn. He's more important than that. But realize why he's there. He is essentially the antithesis of the spook who sat by the door. If anybody has read that book or seen that movie, I recommend you do it, about a brother who infiltrated the FBI and the CIA and would bring back knowledge back to the Black community. Herschel Walker has never been that. Raphael Warnock has been that. And accordingly, Raphael Warnock and people like him and people who support him are the biggest threat to white supremacy and the status quo. And those right-wing extremists know that, and they hope that by simply putting Herschel Walker in front, that you're going to get Black men and some Black women as well saying, oh, I love the way Herschel Walker ran that ball when he was at Georgia. I love the way he ran the ball when he was with the Cowboys. I'm going to vote for him. Instead of actually listening to what he says, because this is the thing, Black people, he does not have our best interests at heart. Not just Black people. I'm unsure if he really has a lot of people's interest at heart, even beyond Black people. And that is extremely, extremely concerning. So the final thing is we have to educate our family members, our friends, our coworkers. We have to acknowledge that Herschel Walker is legacy. Right? Like in the sports world, he is that dude. I mean, look, you play video games with him or somebody else. I mean, it's next level stuff. But guess what? Video games don't keep our kids safe in our communities. Right. Video games and running the ball don't help us to be able to build the families that we want. Those video games and Herschel Walker running that ball, that Heisman Trophy he has, does not help us build an economic base in our communities. You know what? Because if it did, we would have seen Herschel Walker in our communities long before. Pay attention to who he's around. He's not around people that look like us, right? And sometimes, again, that can be okay if you acting like the spook who sat by the door. That's not who he is. And we have to recognize that and recognize what he represents. He is a Black Manchurian candidate, and he needs to be stopped.
And I think one of the things that troubles me so much about this attraction that I'm seeing, and I'm trying to pay attention, and one of the things I'm trying to pay attention to is how I even talk about the people who are in his camp, because you don't want to offend people to the point where they can't really hear what it is that you're trying to say. I don't want to be offensive to people who are actually backing Herschel Walker. If you are backing Herschel Walker and you believe in his candidacy, give us a call, 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK. And I mean that sincerely, because I don't want to act as though there are not people out there who are taking him seriously. But I think you noted a couple of things that I really want us to use, not just to think about how we examine Herschel Walker, but how we examine candidates regardless. The lack of knowledge and the lack of substantive information possession and the ability to facilitate knowledge. Dr. Ray, you're an academic, so I know people are already going to think you a little bougie. I'm a lawyer. People are already going to think I'm a little bougie. But there is something to be said for not just knowing things, but being able to then be a critical thinker about the things that you know, not just saying things, but having some nuance to them and being able to recognize when an ace is an ace and a spade is a spade and when they ain't. And I just feel like there is a real... I don't know who is behind this, but it feels to me like Republicans are banking on the fact that they think Black men in particular are dumb and are easily swept into the emotion of, well, no, that brother, he good to me. We all good. And I feel as though their entire approach to Black men has been to stroke the ignorance that they think Black men have and hold that up as something that should be revered and respected. I'm not a Black man. Maybe you see this differently, Dr. Ray. How am I off here? Help me figure out what it is that's happening, because it seems consistent, even in the appeals to what Donald Trump has done for Black people. Just appeal to stupidity. I mean, I must be missing something, Dr. Ray. Please help me understand.
Well, look, there's a lot of validity to it. And see, the dumb part is important, because this is why Black people and Black men in particular, if they actually thought we were smart, they would have given us a better Black candidate. That's the whole thing we got to realize. See, they dumb us down to running a ball or singing or rapping, and guess what? That's all entertainment for them. See, that's what Herschel Walker is and who he has always been. And look, I can tell people, I grew up in Stone Mountain, Georgia. I grew up in Atlanta. I spent my elementary school years there watching that man run the ball, right? I know about that legacy there. Like, that's where I'm from. And the thing is, people have to recognize that simply where we are now does not mean that's where we were back then. I come from a single parent household. I've never seen my biological father before. I know this plight. I know what Black people are going through. I know how hard it is to be a Black man in America. I've seen my mom. I know how hard it is to be a Black woman in America. And I know one thing, Herschel Walker, at this juncture, where he's at in his point in his career, does not represent the interest that we need. Now, we go back 30, 40 years, it's potentially a different ball game when he's running the ball and he's doing those sort of things, and we can see him in that light. But again, people need to follow the track record. And as you noted, it is the antithesis of Raphael Warnock. Like, but the other part of the validity of this, though, is if we look at Trump's first campaign when he ran against Hillary Clinton in particular, there was a growing group of Black men that were voting Republican, and as you noted, voted for Donald Trump. They like the swagger. They like what that represents. They like the Wild Wild West. They like the free range. Well, guess what? For most of us, we can't really do that. And then when we try to do it, there are constraints to it. Like, even look at Herschel Walker. He is being controlled. That is the Manchurian Candidate part of it. And so we have to recognize what is actually going on here. But I'll say this. A lot of Black men wisened up, because when Trump ran against Biden, Black men were less likely to vote for Trump in that second term than they did in the first term. So look, I get that there are some Republican principles that a growing group of Black people, particularly upper class Black people, they think about the tax breaks, they think about those things. highly religious, conservative Black people that think about abortion. Look, we get that part. But what you have to pay attention to is what the person says about these issues. Go on Herschel Walker's platform, read his website. You have to ask yourself why he is trying to avoid debates. Look, if you actually know what you're talking about and you're coming to the forefront, you should debate. Think about this. Herschel Walker has spent his entire life in front of people, performing in front of people. And now all of a sudden he don't want to debate one person. He don't want to be the running back and take on the middle linebacker that one last time. We have to ask ourselves, how does that make sense? So we can use the sports analogy to think about this, because that's how I think about it. I'm like, Herschel Walker, one of the best running backs ever. That dude has never backed down to a challenge until Reverend Raphael Warnock challenges him to a debate. And now he's continuously getting out of it. Now, supposedly one is coming up. We're going to try and figure it out. But the whole point is we have to think about why that's happening. And that is because they, being right-wing extremists, conservatives, even moderate Republicans who want to win for the Republican Party, hope you all won't pay attention to actually what this man is saying and what he has actually done, or should I say not done, for the Black community over the past 30 years.
Because I don't have a record of Herschel Walker doing anything to advance Black interests. I've searched the record. I'm on his website right now, Dr. Ray. There's nothing in that I've seen, and I'm not a child of the South or a child of Georgia, so maybe it's there and I just don't see it. But I see no platform that speaks to how he has benefited Black people, other than the pride factor, which we can get that in droves. But I see nothing about his platforms to help Black people. I don't see anything that he has done in the past that makes him someone that we would look to for policy answers. And when you said he is the anti-Spook, Spook That Sat by the Door is an amazing book. It's an okay film as well, but an amazing book. And I encourage people to read it because the Spook played a very particular role. The Spook was a part of the system to intentionally bring the benefits of the system back to the people. The Spook was sitting in those spaces, navigating those difficult challenges, because the Spook was there in order to get information, extract the data, bring it back to the hood, so the hood would be able to have a revolution and get what it is that we all deserve. The anti-Spook, this character or this label that you use, I think is really important, because when we think about a Herschel Walker whose role is to empower Republicans, who we heard in the clip before the break, stealing votes left, right, and center, challenging nearly 40,000 voters who are trying to vote, specifically focused on Gwinnett County and counties that are heavily Black. He is a part of a political apparatus that is designed to disenfranchise Black people, to prevent Black people from being able to vote. And the Republicans actually think this is going to be the candidate that can either get enough Black people to vote for him, that Warnock is in trouble, or get enough people to stay home that Warnock is in trouble. I'm just hoping they're not actually correct, Dr. Ray.
I'm going to tell you, Lurie, Black people should always be worried when an overwhelming majority of white people support somebody Black. That's just a fact. We should be worried. And let me tell you why. Because even though the percentage of people that are overtly racist, now we can talk about the covert stuff, but overtly racist has decreased over the past 40 years or so. And it's still a sizable percentage. And that's my whole point. That when that sizable percentage of racist, like in Georgia, there's a lot of them, when they support a Black person, what does that mean? Like Black people, we really have to think about that. What does that mean? Because it's a thing. There are always going to be some white people who are down for diversity, who are down for equality. We've seen that with the Freedom Riders. We've seen that more recently with people who've been to various sorts of marches for racial justice and other things. That's great. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the 20 to 30% that are overtly racist. Your coworker who won't invite your kids over their house. Your neighbor who locks their doors every time they see you walking by. They got that Herschel Walker sign in their yard.
Come on now.
Why is that? That's because he's a Black Manchurian candidate. And so Black people, look, this is the biggest thing. And we talked about this on the show. They always say if you want to hide something from Black people, put it in a book. Research shows not just Black people, a lot of people. You hide things in books, you hide things where people read, and instead they show us something. We have to be willing to look at his platform and actually listen to him and make a decision.
My guest, Dr. Rashawn Ray, is helping me to unpack a bit more of the world around us. And I was telling Dr. Ray during the break, it's one of the challenges I face talking about Herschel Walker is that I don't want to come off as, being anti-Black man. We got, one, because I'm not. God bless Black men. Love them all. Shout out to you, Brian Favors. But, God bless Black men. Not at all. But it's hard to sort of have some of these conversations sometimes in a way that allows us to be faithful to the expectations I have of elected officials and people who are trying to who are candidates running for our vote. And just the reality that Herschel Walker. And Dr. Ray, you said something really helpful during the break. You were like, but we're not talking about Herschel Walker as opposed to a white opponent. We're talking about Herschel Walker as compared to Raphael Warnock, which admittedly does make this an easier conversation to have if it were, say, Herschel Walker facing off with Jon Ossoff, right? That would be a more challenging conversation. So, Dr. Ray, we talked about Herschel Walker being the anti-spook who sat by the door. And if he's listening, I know he's not, but if anyone from his camp is listening, I guarantee you one thing we are going to hear is they call him the anti-spook. I guarantee you that's going to be a thing that sticks.
The anti-spook.
The anti-spook. If he is the anti-spook, what is it that we should be looking to candidates who are coming from our communities who want to represent us? Let's look at his opponent. Let's look at the incumbent, Raphael Warnock, and what he represents as, some might say, the spook. Who, I know some of y'all don't understand this name, the spook, and y'all think it's an insult, and it is, but in this particular context, you want to be the spook. You don't want to be the anti-spook. Talk with us about what we should be looking for and what we should demand, damn it, from people who say they want our votes and have the nerve to say they want it while wearing our skin.
Yeah. The nerve to just demand it and think they're going to get the vote simply because they wear our skin. And I think that's key. Look, in Black areas, whether we're talking about the Atlanta area and the broader suburbs, again, which I know very well, the Washington, D.C. area in Prince George's County, which I also know very well. One thing that happens there, particularly for Black people who move to these areas, all you see are signs of Black candidates. Republicans oftentimes don't even try to campaign in these places, in these predominantly Black areas. So what they do is they'll take a Black face and put it on a white sign and put it up in our neighborhood and think that simply because they got our skin that we're going to vote for them. So it's a few things. First, what issues concern you the most? Are you concerned about education? Are you concerned about building? Are you concerned about, what's happening with healthcare? Then you take those issues and you go to the websites of these candidates. And again, in Black areas, you really have to do your homework. And even in predominantly white areas, you can't simply because they had a Black skin that's going to work. You then look at their track record. What are they saying about these issues and what have they done? The third thing, and this is a big one for me, have they actually been in the hood? See, have they actually been there walking around, talking to people, canvassing? I know one thing, Raphael Warnock has done that a lot. Look, Ebenezer Church, look where it is. This brother is there in those particular spaces. The other thing you have to do then, in looking at the track record, and let's just talk about Warnock, some of the issues he has advanced around police reform, around helping to ensure that Black farmers are getting their due. He got that legislation passed, what we know is currently in the courts. That's extremely important, particularly for a state like Georgia. Then the final thing, what does the person represent as a person? Because you got to realize when you elect a candidate, you're not just electing them, you're electing their family and all of their baggage. Who do they represent? What do they look like? When I compare those two candidates, you have Herschel Walker, who again, after chastising Black men for not being good fathers, we got to keep after chastising Black men. Now, he specifically talked about Black men. Then, of course, we find out that this brother got kids that he hadn't been taking care of. Look, that doesn't represent me. That doesn't represent the Black men that I know that I want to have represented. Raphael Warnock, on the other hand, married, taking care of his kids. What does that look like? And this is the final point. In this analogy, if Herschel Walker is the running back, what is he the running back for? Well, unfortunately, he is the running back that is running up white supremacy going down the field, and Raphael Warnock is the middle linebacker trying to prevent them from scoring once again. So when we are talking about what they look like, we have to look at their platforms. We have to ask what issues concern us the most. It's so many things we could focus on. Focus on 2 to 3 issues that concern you. Look at their platforms, look at their websites. Watch their clips beyond just these simple commercials they put out, these 30-second things. You can make anybody sound good in 30 seconds. And then look at their track record and what they have done in the hood. And when I look at it, besides people wearing Herschel Walker jerseys, throwback jerseys, I haven't seen that brother in the hoods I grew up in.
Well, what issues concern you the most? What is their track record on these issues? Have they been in the hood, and under what circumstances have they been in the hood? Because if they was just driving by tossing out free turkeys during Thanksgiving, that don't count. And what do they represent as a person? What baggage do they bring to this space? Now, that is a framework that I think when we apply it to not just a Herschel Walker as opposed to a Raphael Warnock, when we apply it to any of the candidates coming into our churches and our mosques and trying to, kiss our little melanated babies and shake our hands for, since the last time they touched a black person was when they was last seeking votes, this is exactly the type of framework that we should be employing for all of the candidates seeking our votes. Ask ourselves, what is the most important issue to us, me, the individual? What do I care about the most? Maybe I got kids. I don't care about schools. Forget them kids. Maybe I care passionately about schools. I love them kids. Whatever it is, what do you care about the most? 2 or 3 issues, you said, Dr. Ray. Then see what is the track record for these candidates on these issues. And I would say not just as they're running. What is the track record for these candidates as in their individual lives? Do they show up to PTA meetings? They talking about they care about education? Were they a part of the school community? Were they a part of healthcare? Were they advocating for healthcare? Stacey Abrams, we know she cares about voting. When she lost against Brian Kemp, you know what she did? She went back to doing the work of getting out the votes because we knew what her track record was. Have they been in the hood, and under what capacity? Are they just there buying your votes, passing out free gas coupons, which I'm pretty sure is illegal? And who do they represent as a person? What baggage are they bringing into that Senate seat? Is it the 4 kids we know about that we begrudgingly found out about? Are there others? We don't know. And I'm not opposed to having, children out there and in the universe. If you're taking care of them, we talking about I might have some half siblings myself that I didn't know anything about. It happens. I get it. But if you are not caring for these children while at the same time you are talking mess about black men, criticizing black men, talking about how they're terrible fathers, making it seem as though they can't keep it in their pants, that to me is anti-black. That to me creates Herschel Walker as an anti-black candidate under this framework. And this is not a framework that is particular to him. This is a framework that I think every single one of us should be employing anytime we have to evaluate these candidates. Dr. Ray, I see why you do what you do. You're very good at it. Thank you for talking me off the ledge. We have some other clips that we're going to have to talk about. There's some videos Dr. Ray and I was talking about during the break. At some point, we're going to have to talk about that video. We will not do it today because I will be crucified and I can't take you down with me in flames, brother. But how can people follow you? How can they stay connected to you?
I'm always ready to ride with you, Lurie. We got to go into the lion's den always, including and obviously in talking to our own people. So look, people can connect with me on social media at Sociologist Ray. Just click the link in my bio. They'll see all the things that I have going on, exciting things, again, about these how-tos of how we overcome, how we thrive and not just survive in an America that was built to resist our empowerment and our progress.
Dr. Rashawn Ray, it is always a pleasure to have you here on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. Thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me.
Y'all, one day we're going to talk about that video. Can't do it now. Can't do it today.